Good afternoon and welcome back. You're all surviving and still there going. Excellent. It's been a pretty long day, but we've got a very exciting panel for you to finish off the discussions. Our last plenary session of the day. We're going to be exploring the issue of quality in terms of meeting the needs of end users using AI-based NLP tools. The panel members that we have here, and we also have someone who's joining us online, they will be giving the perspective of different European institutions, touching on topics such as speech-to-text translation, what quality means, and keeping translator skills up to date. Just to let you know, just again, the person who is online, there will be no interpretation for them, but we will have interpretation for the people in the room here. So I'm now going to hand over to the chair for the discussions, Markus Foti. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So we're going to turn the tables a little bit this evening. Up to now, we've been listening to, largely from a translator perspective, except for the case of the professor in the last session. Right now, we're looking at people who are all involved in IT projects, IT tools, a little bit in the market side. Most of us have a background in translation, so we do have that perspective as well. But we're maybe going to shake things up a little bit. We'll see. My name is Markus Foti. I work for DGT. I worked 13 years as a translator. I am now responsible for the e-translation, machine translation project. So here we also have Livia Florensa, who works on the ISO standards, including, she's the project leader for ISO 18587, post-editing of machine translation, which is about to be revised, or for which revision is ongoing. Livia, could you explain just very briefly what you work on, and then we'll dig deeper into the topics later? Hi.
Okay. Well, first of all, welcome to everybody. And as you were saying, I was the project leader of the ISO standard on post-editing, which was published in 2017. And now it's time to revise it. So I have been asked to be the project leader again. So the revision will start very briefly, and I think it will take around 3 years, more or less.
Thank you, Livia. And then I'd like to go to Mauro Bubnic, who works for the Translation Center for the European bodies. Bodies, yes? Okay. Who is very involved in all aspects, probably covers the widest range when I look at all of us here. Mauro?
Thank you very much. Maybe I should start with my background as well. So I'm a conference interpreter. I have a degree in conference interpreting, and actually I have never worked as an interpreter in my life. So that gives an idea of the possible evolution of a professional life. I have worked as a translator and in human resources, and so I guess it should be louder. I am now head of the Translation Support Department at the Translation Center for the Bodies of the European Union. What we do in the department is basically receiving requests from clients, treating them, everything except the translation part, because that is done by translators in another department. Then developing linguistic services, like machine translation as well. And finally, managing the IATE database. Obviously, the terminology work is done by all the institutions, but we have the technicians, the developers, that actually take care of the development of the database. Yes, I mean, what Livia said was interesting, because actually, even though there is no common agreement on the definition of post-editing, at least in the EU world, we actually draw inspiration from the ISO standard, the 2017 ISO standard, and we do use post-editing, both the full post-editing and the light post-editing, which is something that actually no other institution does, at least the light post-editing, and potentially not even the other one. So, but we will see the details maybe later on.
And then we have Bruno Pouliquen from WIPO, who has set up a speech-to-text system for conferencing. So Bruno, could you explain to us what you've managed to do, to achieve?
So first of all, my apologies. I'm not an ex-translator, no interpreter. I do like languages, but I'm an IT guy. So we built, my background is into IT, and I built a machine translation tool using machine learning. We use open source. We built our own system. And following that, we built also our own system for speech recognition. And both of them are in use in production currently at WIPO, our organization. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Bruno. And we have Vera Vasconcelos, who is from the European Parliament, working on that exact same project, which raised a little bit of, which attracted attention during one of the previous panels. So, Vera.
I have to say it's easier to be on that side than on this side. Hi everyone, I'm Vera Vasconcelos. I joined the Parliament almost 20 years ago now. First 10 years I worked as a translator, so typical linguist profile learning with the best, how to work in the institutional environment. At the time things were different, so I was lucky to witness the change, the evolution into CAT tools, translation memories, all of that. I took deep interests in bridging the gaps between IT tools, IT developments, and the business needs, the end users' needs. So after 10 years, I started following up closely on IT projects, always from the end user point of view, through different jobs, and that's how I landed now on speech-to-text. It's a challenging project. We aim to achieve a tool that is at the moment a prototype. We aim to cover the 24 languages of the European Union and to have a tool that covers our events in real time with both speech recognition and machine translation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Livia, then if we can go to you, with regard to the ISO standards, we want to look at everybody. How do they serve their clients? What do people expect from you? Now, in your case, you won't be serving clients directly when you're working on this, but we've seen the standard referenced a couple of times in this conference. People will be looking at it as a way to serve their clients. So can you explain to us the work that's going on there, or the issues you're wrestling with? And if you do have a bit of reaction, more reaction from the people according to the current standard. Thanks.
Okay. So quality standards is exactly what they mean. They are looking for quality in the translation industry. So mainly when we decide to work on a standard and to develop a new standard, we want to set up the utmost quality, and we want to set up requirements that companies who want to be certified by a specific standard need to adhere to. So basically we established, I took part in the development of ISO 17100, which, as you know, is the main standard for translation. And I was the architect and project leader of the ISO on post-editing. And both standards, what they establish is requirements for translation companies to follow. They want to produce a quality product, a quality output. Of course, then there are other requirements from clients, because as we all know, quality is one of the 3 requirements that clients have. They also have requirements regarding deadlines, so timeliness is very important, and also regarding cost. So even if the translator in us wants to provide the highest quality, the highest possible quality, it's not always possible to do that, because we have constraints from the customers regarding time and regarding cost. So we need to be creative, and we need to automatize processes in order to always meet customers' expectations. But from a standards point of view, what we aim at is to provide requirements, references for the translation companies and also for customers to follow when we want to achieve a quality output.
Thank you. Could I just ask, maybe it's my own ignorance with regard to this, but how many stakeholders are involved in defining these the standards? How many people will you be reaching out to? And how controversial do you expect the discussions to be, or will they be very consensual?
Are you referring to the ISO on post-editing?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Well, as you all know, there is a lot of reticency from the industry to use machine translation. And I think, from my point of view, it's a reality now, and we have to adapt to machine translation and post-editing. Of course, from translators, I think for them it's a little bit, tougher to adapt to this because they will receive cheaper rates, although they will be able to produce more work in less time. But there is reticency from customers because machine translation is something that started a long time ago and that it has been very, very bad for a long time. And only very recently, and I think it's with the advent of neural machine translation has started being really good for specific fields and for specific language combination. And from my opinion, in technical translation, the outcome is really very good. So, but of course, I think many customers, many vendors, they still think that machine translation is what you get from a general machine translation engine like Google Translation. And for instance, if you have an editorial translation or you have a creative translation, of course you cannot apply machine translation. So the text that you want to translate with machine translation needs to be suitable for machine translation as well. But if it is used well, the results can be very good. And with full post-editing, I would say that the results are indistinguishable from human quality. And even sometimes they are better than human quality.
Okay, quite a controversial statement maybe. Thank you, Livia. Let's go to Mauro and see if he can tell us, because you're doing this on the ground. You have clients, it's not quite the free market, but they have to pay for the work that you do, and you are using all these different techniques. So how is that going? Can we take the other mic?
Well, yes, maybe I should explain a bit why we are a bit different from the other EU organizations. As you said, our clients pay for our services, and therefore the cost is an important element in the general picture of the translation that or the linguistic services that we provide. So it means that now when we organize calls for tenders, we systematically include translation, full post-editing and light post-editing. And of course they have different rates. Why do we do that? Because there is pressure from the clients to pay less. Now, we follow the ISO standard in the sense that when we produce full post-editing, the result must be equivalent to a human translation. The difference is that we base it on custom machine translation engines, so not general ones, custom ones, and therefore we are able to produce better results, better output, and therefore less effort on the part of the translators or the post-editors who have to work afterwards. What is the result? We get indeed cheaper prices from freelancers, and we are able to offer also cheaper prices to our customers in the end, because when we treat a document as a full post-editing, then the customer pays a bit less. Although they cannot ask for full post-editing, because I forgot to mention that for us, full post-editing is just a working method. It's not a service. The client always asks for translation. And when we have domain-specific engines for that client, then of course we use this internal working method and they pay less. But they do not ask for full post-editing, while light post-editing is a real service. Light post-editing is not based, in our experience, on domain-specific engines. It's based on generic engines. Our own engines, by the way, which are called with a 4-letter word, not the one that is crossing maybe some people's minds. They are called NICE. NICE meaning Neural Integrated Custom Engines. In this case, we again follow the little annex that is included in the ISO standard. Maybe for the definition, I should say that the content must be correct. There must be no omissions, no additions. The style, we recommend that translators or post-editors do not really change it unless it's really necessary for understanding the sentences. In this case, what happens is that actually we produce documents faster. because it takes less time to correct a text that is for light post-editing. And we offer a much lower price to our clients. Obviously, it's the same for freelancers. But we don't ask them to give us a specific price. It's their price. Freelancers propose a certain price for light post-editing or for full post-editing, so we don't force anyone.
Because I was going to ask you, I was going to say, okay, the clients, if you tell them the price is lower, yeah, they love it. But if you tell the translators the price is lower, they're not going to be so happy. But what you're saying is that, in fact, it's that lower price, it's not you that have instigated it, it's the contractor.
It's the contractor, indeed. So we, obviously, before launching all this, we did assessments. We estimated how much time people would save. We keep checking the quality. We measure month by month the post-editing effort, language by language, by the way, because, of course, there are huge differences between the different languages. For example, I was surprised to discover that Maltese requires very little post-editing effort. It's systematically the first language. And while Lithuanian and Latvian are actually not very good. Obviously, we keep improving the engines as well.
Okay, so that's what we see where the human is still in the loop. I think the part that maybe is going to be a little bit controversial, and we have two panel members to address it, and I'll address it a bit myself. We can look at WIPO's situation. So Bruno, can you tell us what you've set up, who it serves, who the users are, and what their reaction to the service has been?
Okay, thank you. So I'm a kind of the bad guy in the panel, as I'm the IT provider. We first initiated with building machine translation, our own machine translation, because we've got a lot of data. So we started from the patent domain. So in the patent domain, I may have said it already, if you wanted to read all the Chinese patents that are to be published, you would have to read 7 patents per minute. So in Chinese language. So the amount of data is huge, is enormous. And there is no other way than provide machine translation. So it will never be translated. It's just humanly not possible. And I'm talking about Chinese, but Japanese, Korean are huge producers. So we built our own machine translation tool using open source, and then it's available on our search engine. And now you can get a gist translation of any Chinese patent that is published, and this is done online. So in that case, our first experience was an alternative to zero translation. So no post edition, of course. It's a service that we offer to the final client. So that was our experience in machine translation. We took very quickly the neural machine translation in-house. So we were early adopter of this technique also. And we do use also machine translation as a help for translators, but I would not extend in this use case. And now I go to speech to text. So we were having also a lot of conferences at WIPO and a lot of verbatim reports, and we decided to use a similar technique based on machine learning to build our own speech to text, our own speech recognition. So it was launched 3 years ago. It is in production since 3 years from now. Now it's working in the 6 official UN languages, and it's live. I mean, you can look at webcast.wipo.int, and you will be able to get the automatic speech recognition of any conference that happens at WIPO.
And user feedback?
Yes, so the user feedback is good because we've got no user feedback. It's a bit frustrating when you work in as IT We do translation, for example, those Chinese translation that we do is every day we translate 3.5 million words, and the feedback is 0. So as soon as it works, you've got no feedback, and the good thing is when it's used, it means it's useful. When it stops, then we get a lot of feedbacks. If we have a bug in the Chinese, the Arabic or the German pattern that are not automatically translated, then we get feedbacks. Yeah. And for the speech to text, the use case was a bit different, and it's quite interesting. It was at the end of a conference, WIPO used to produce verbatim reports, and this was a tedious task to listen to everything that was said and type it and as accurate as possible, 100% accuracy, and then send it to translation and send the verbatim reports in the 6 official languages. And a key aspect in the speech-to-text adoption was the speed. What the speed is, the time to type, the time to translate. The delegates were receiving the verbatim reports in their own language, sometimes months after the conference. And in the meantime, of course, if they needed the verbatim, they would go to the English verbatim, which was obviously already quite late after the conference. So the key aspect for this adoption was the speed. It's available 15 minutes or let's say now a few hours maximum after the end of the conference. You have an automatic verbatim report generated from in the 6 official languages. And we can say it's a success story. There is work to do. We have to improve our speech-to-text accuracy, but I would qualify it as a success story in the sense that the delegates are happy, and WIPO is happy because it's saving a lot of money. Not to have to type and to translate those verbatim reports.
Okay, so we've seen technology as an aid to what translators are doing. We've seen technology being served up directly to end users, and now we have a similar project which we've had a sneak peek about, the Parliament's project. Can you tell us what was there before, where you're going, and what reaction has been so far?
Yeah, so the first thing is that speech recognition is not brand new to the Parliament. We've always used some forms of offline speech recognition, specifically, in particular in some languages, because the market there was always a shortage of coverage for all the languages. So for some languages, the so-called classical languages, English, French, German, there was always software licenses acquired for specific jobs and that were used in-house. The thing is, about 5-6 years ago, this idea of looking into the future, I think, became clearer. There were market studies conducted that revealed that no software on the market, there was no software available that would cover all the official languages, and that's where the idea of launching a partnership with the market came up, actually. So it was actually a happy coincidence that the tendering procedures, there was this new so-called innovation partnership that was used for the first time by the Parliament, among all the institutions, So what we did, and that was quite challenging, we had to come up with a series of specifications, not knowing exactly where the market was going to go in the coming years. And we're talking here about 2018, 2019. As you know, then the world changed with the pandemic. So some of the requirements spelled out in the call for tenders had to be slightly adapted to the lockdowns and all of that. But we managed to reach almost the end of stage 2. The project is divided in 3 stages, and we'll soon be entering stage 3. Hopefully, the project will be completed end of next year with the full coverage of 24 languages, as I said.
And the reaction so far has been?
I mean, we've had the chance to experiment a bit while we're in a project phase. We've had some real-life situations, and usually the reactions are quite positive, and end users are surprised, actually, that we made it this far. But again, I mean, many things are still not totally under control, like the topics and how well the engines respond to topics and how well they perform, I mean, on a live situation. But generally, it's been quite positive, the feedback.
Okay, thank you. So what we've seen here is, yes, humans involved in the loop, but with the MT going, or transcription, AI language-based tools, things going directly out to the public. We've seen new niches, new services provided, or services provided much more quickly. In my own project, the e-translation project of the European Commission and the other EU institutions who contribute as well. What we've seen is that the European Commission has been translating more and more with fewer and fewer people every year. Last year was a record year where they produced 2.8 million pages of translation. This is the human translation I'm talking about, the team of 1,500 translators. They do use machine translation, they use translation memories, all of the tools. E-translation during that period produced 204 million pages of translation because it's translating things such as metadata, such as websites, which simply would not get translated. There was a struggle in the sense that people wanted to translate. For example, someone raised the point of Sharon O'Brien, COVID information going out through websites. We had a website, the Commission set up a website called Reopen EU. There was an attempt made to translate it. The problem was that things were changing just too fast. People could not keep up with it. You'd give a 2-week deadline for a human translation, and by that time the documents had changed 3 or 4 times. So they switched to machine translation for that purpose. Doesn't mean the translators had less work. They were still extremely busy, as the record output shows. But let's go back to the question of quality. So I'd like to go to Livia. You've heard these use cases. You were focused specifically on post-editing, at least in the way that on the first question. I wonder what your reflections would be with regard to quality coming out in these methods. You mentioned timeliness. Any other thoughts?
Well, I think quality can be achieved with these methods, of course. I don't think applying a machine translation process plus full post-editing won't produce quality. I think it can produce very good quality. And in my own experience, because I have also been a translator, I have been a post-editor, and applying full post-editing produces a very high quality. So I don't think. And there are also many parts of a translation process which don't add really value, and that could be automatized. So I'm in favor of automatizing everything possible, and that we have the human touch to add in the human value. But there are many parts of a translation process that can be automatized, and I, of course, am in favor of that. And with standards, we always want to achieve the highest possible quality. So that's why we have only full post-editing in the body of the standard. Light post-editing is, as it was said before, it's an annex, it's in the annex. So it's referenced because it's there in the market, but it's not part of the body of the standard. So quality standards always want to reach the best possible quality. And I think with translation, well, it was the same thing before with CAT tools. When CAT tools started, there was also reticency from the market. There was reticency from the customers. We had to explain to the customers how it worked. There was reticency from vendors. They didn't want to use it at the beginning. And now I think translation cannot be done without the CAT tools. So it's something that it has become a reality. And I think with machine translation and of course speech to text as well, this kind of technologies, they are part of a translation process now. So it's a reality and we cannot avoid it.
Okay, Thanks, Livia. Mauro, you also do subtitling. And I'm wondering what the process is for that, what role technology plays, and how do you judge the quality of it? Because we saw yesterday the focus on leaving the first part and the last part the same, but condensing the center as a rule of thumb, those sorts of questions. How does the Translation Center do it?
Yeah, it's the same principle. I mean, subtitling is not translating. It's something completely different because you have to adapt the text. Otherwise, I mean, there is a rule for certain length, a certain number of lines, and where they should be put, and therefore you cannot really reproduce what is being said. You must adapt it. In terms of technology, we use the same for subtitling and transcription. We haven't developed anything special, so we actually use a commercial product. So we are not particularly innovative, not like Bruno Pouliquen. But it's actually one of the first services that we launched, which was not translation, because we launched subtitling in 2015 already. So it's quite, it's already 7 years. But I want to mention something that was actually mentioned both by Bruno and Livia, and it was speed, in a way, because indeed it's quality is important, but it's not always, and cost is important, but they are not always the most important thing. When we translate, for example, documents for criminal investigation, the person the prosecutor who is going to read the document doesn't really care about the style of the document, but wants to be sure that the content is correct, and he wants to have the content translated quickly. This is an example where we use light post editing, you see. It's not for publishing documents, but it's really for something which is for internal use, where speed is more important than the rest, even more than cost. So that's I would say, the main use case that we have for light post editing right now. We do it for one specific client in criminal investigations.
Okay, thank you. I see that there's a fair number of questions popping up, and they seem quite interesting to me. So shall we move to some of the Slido questions? It gives us a good 25 minutes to address them. Are they coming up? Okay, perfect. I will look at the screen in the back rather than my phone for that. So I think Mauro kind of addressed the first question. Do you agree with the fact that productivity is taking over quality? I'm going to ask Vera, can you comment on that? Because your situation is, you're working on a specific project, a project where people could have done everything. Bruno already expressed the fact that that was their situation, except that they were getting, what was it, a couple of months later you would get the transcripts. Now it's 15 minutes later. Do we agree productivity is taking over?
I'm not sure I can fully answer the question, but I will give you the reason for our project. The main reason is actually accessibility, that we've extensively discussed in the morning here. Basically, we're not trying to replace any of the existing services, so it should not be seen as a sort of competitor to what we did or we do so far. It's actually another providing a service, especially to the deaf and hard of hearing community, and bringing the citizen closer to the European Parliament's activity. Because I think there was over time also awareness with, through the elections that we've had, that the turnout was not necessarily as expected. So the citizen was a bit, was taking too much distance from all these European issues where he's actually asked to contribute to. And this is the underlying idea of having this project, is to actually bring the citizen closer, this community where currently we offer no solution for them to follow our online debates. We have a lot of activity on web streaming because we are a very open institution, and I'm not judging the others, but by the nature of our work is public. And this is where we have an enormous advantage when it comes to training language models. A lot of our data is public by definition. And that's why we can make it available to our external contractor, and they can enrich the language models, and that's how we create, let's say, a product that suits our needs. So this is actually a huge advantage we have. Now, I don't know if I have answered the question. I don't think it's about replacing, because I give you the clear, concrete example. We have for our plenary debates, we've had for years, and we still have, and we will always have the verbatim of all the proceedings. And we're not trying to offer a service that goes into that direction, because, this is about spoken word, what you apprehend in a few seconds, and then it passes, and that's it. This is for the immediate communication. It's not to stay set in stone on OJ or official journal.
So in your case, there is still an official record which is generated using the convention.
Sure, and it's we're not questioning that. And in the house, it is understood that that's a service that we have for the members and ultimately for the citizen as well. But in this case, it's more about of the project. It's more about immediate access to the parliamentary debates.
I think Mauro wants to comment, but maybe I'll just ask Livia if she wants to make sure. It's very easy when you're connected remotely to be left out. So do you want to weigh in on this, Livia?
Yes, I would say that is not always true, because it depends on the customer expectations and needs. So in a case, as Mauro was explaining, in this case, productivity is key. And of course, quality is not that important. But if you are working for a life science company, they will probably think that quality is the most important thing. And they don't care if you need some more time to provide a quality product. So it depends on what the customer needs.
Yes, I would add that actually we have an expression in the EU world, at least it's fit for purpose. It really depends on what you want to have. If you are translating legislation, productivity is less relevant than quality. You want to have something which is really excellent at the very end. In other cases, top quality is not needed. So it's a matter of adapting to the purpose of the document which is being asked for, requested. So I wouldn't say that productivity is taken over. It's just a matter of adapting it to the different purposes and products and user needs.
Okay. Those are quite positive views. I'm going to be a bit more negative. I'm going to take advantage of my role as chair to speak my views on this, which is I think there is obviously a lot of pressure on translators now. I think it's true that with machine translation being very easily available, translators need to offer something more, and you're not going to win on speed. So what I think is needed, my personal opinions here, are specializations, special knowledge. We had a lot of examples here because we had the example of subtitles. We had the example of Arte and other channels where there's an artistic side to it, which the machine translation doesn't have it. It's just clunky, it's just facts. It's just if you want some facts, okay, you can use it. But if you have that, or if it's medical stuff, legal stuff, where precision is very key, then yes, you can do it, and productivity is not going to be the key goal, because accuracy or artistry is the key factor. But if you're going to try to compete on producing a lot of menus really quickly in a big tourist city, you're not going to make money, and I don't think that's going to be very professionally satisfying in any case. That's okay, that's just my personal opinion. I saw on Slido a question that I'm going to throw at Bruno, which, Bruno, MT is fed by the work of professional translators, directly or indirectly. Don't you think that translators' rates should compensate for this, not be lower? Can we put it up on the screen?
That's a very, very interesting and delicate issue. So First of all, at WIPO, we evaluate a lot the translation that was done by professional translators, because we build our own system, so we know that the garbage in, garbage out, and quality in, quality out. So of course, the translation that were produced by translator is a golden mine. And by the way, I take this small opportunity to ask if you have parallel texts, if you have audio and verbatim transcript for speech recognition, please consider making it publicly available. So, and sharing with other institutions and etc. So, I'm here advocating. So, I do not want to.
Because I really agree with you from that appeal, but I think the question was completely the opposite direction.
I do not try to hide the initial question. So, I'm not sure I'm the good person to answer that. Yes and no. What I have produced, and when I work for the European Commission, can I ask the European Commission to give me some royalties for what I've done? No, the job is done. I was paid for that. So I mean, but that's a pure personal opinion, and I'm part of the intellectual property organization, so I should not say too much about that. There was. I think it's more a question than an answer. Also, the interpretation is something that is supposed to be used only for the purpose of the during a meeting, and maybe not available for future use. So honestly, I do not want to say something wrong, because I do not feel I am really qualified to answer this question. But it's definitely a good question, because we build AI, we build machine learning on top of something, and this something has of course some value, definitely some value. But I prefer stopping there, because.
Okay, sorry, Bruno, for passing that to you. But Mauro is going to be brave and comment as well.
Yeah, I have the bad role today. So, no, basically there was a suggestion before by, I think, Hendrik, who said, be a member of an association in order to have higher rates, possibly. And the second point is, of course, you are feeding machine translation, but then not the same result, but in general, the common effort of feeding machine translation is that in the end you get a better quality output, which should help the translator to translate faster, basically. So there is an indirect advantage afterwards. I don't know if that will satisfy people, but I mean, I see it this way. On the one hand, the associations, maybe, at least interpreters had associations with minimum rates. So for translators, it's not the same, but maybe it's a way to be followed.
Thanks, Mauro. I see another question, which is, since quality is in our title, I think we should address it quickly. I identify the need to revise our definition of quality. May I ask every panelist to share their own definition of the term? I don't know. Okay, Livia, you're working on a standard, which is going to take 3 years to define about quality. Do you want to do it in 3 sentences? Then we can close the
yes.
ISO thing, and you tell them you solved it here at TEF.
Okay, I think there are 2 ways of looking at quality. So the first one is what we can consider objective quality, which is applying different quality layers in a translation process, linguistic aids, having a 4I's principle. So applying all linguistic aids and quality steps that can help you to get to a quality product. So that would be like a first definition of quality. But then my definition of quality is giving the customer what the customer wants.
Okay, thank you. Who else wants to? Oh, you've stumped us. I'll take a try. So I think that the two things that I mentioned before are examples, that is artistry and legal documents, medical documents. There are clear objective definitions of quality. That is the best possible text that the translator can produce. But I think in a lot of environments that is not the only thing that defines quality. We had the triangle referred to yesterday of cost and speed and quality. In some cases, you need the speed. In some cases, the people don't have the money. So meeting the customer's needs, I go with Livia on that, but it's not easy to define. Do you want to comment also?
Well, I would say also that, quality can be defined in absolute terms, saying, top quality must be top quality only. But then, as you just said, you have to consider reality and the fact that sometimes there are other aspects which are more important in that moment. And like speed, again, we go back to the same things, speed and cost. So, there is this absolute definition, but then you have to adapt to what the market wants, at least in our case.
Yeah.
And I would like to add also that MT and speech-to-text adds new functionalities that were not present before. So some 20 years ago, when you were reading a Chinese pattern, what were the options? None. Now you can receive the verbatim report of a conference minutes after the end of the conference. So shall we not do it because the quality is not good? I do not agree. If the quality is good enough for somebody to absorb the information, we should do it. So as an alternative to zero. So there are plenty of cases where 100% accuracy is not needed or can be compensated by the cost and by the speed. But of course, the full human quality on a published document, official document, of course, there is no compromise on that.
Vera, we've all done it. Do you want to weigh in as well?
I can try and explain how we aim for quality in our project. We set benchmarks which are probably not the most ambitious, and they differ between languages. So it's not the same degree of performance that we expect for all the languages. The low-resource language, so-called low-resource languages, like Maltese, Irish, have obviously, the expectations are lower because there is less data to build on these languages. But again, we also deviated from market standards and metrics that, for the purpose of our project, where, they could be misleading in the sense that the end product, if based on such metrics, could have still let the end user down, so to say. So we created the concept of naive user. So if you're a naive user of a certain language and you're happy and you get the message, obviously according to a set of criteria that we specified in the call for tenders, but it's a bit more holistic, and what we really have is human evaluators assessing for each language the quality. So this is our concept of quality, which is not probably absolute terms, as you rightly said, and it's not as strict as the quality standards we set out in our guidelines for written translation.
Okay, thanks. It sounds a bit, not to sound too negative, but it sounds like how much can we get away with, and people will accept it.
As long as the naive user accepts it, you see, this is the thing. Then it means that it's there or almost there, because I mean our evaluation exercises are really sort of seriously carried out with a lot of people, and then the averaging also shows where we are.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to another question. What is the panel's experience with MT quality estimation tools? Have you deployed any in any of your workflows or know of any unsuccessful deployments? I'm going to take that one first just to start, Dragos, if I can. We have recently deployed a quality estimation tool, which is an AI-based tool, which took a long time to develop because we played with it for years. And we always found that the results, well, what the researcher who worked most on it always said was, oh, well, it's no better than chance. Basically, we would just get numbers out and it's like, well, the system thinks it's good and it's, no, it's terrible. And the system thinks it's terrible and it's actually just fine, but it differs from what we had in our database for the reference translation. So our experience was bad until recently, and now we find that it is somewhat better than chance. So it's improving, but it's, in our experience with what we've done, still very unreliable, but at least in general it points at the right direction. And in our case, we looked at it on a sentence-by-sentence basis. But I know Mauro is going to comment for sure, because they're very ambitious at the Translation Center, so go ahead.
Yes, of course, before launching any domain-based engine, we make assessments. So translators have to look at the results and then assess whether the quality is good enough for post-editing. So we always do it, it's systematically. Afterwards, as I said before, we follow month by month the post-editing effort or the similarity. And we also have a dashboard to follow, if wanted, every day or whenever we launch a new version of the engines. So by post-editing effort, I mean the number of changes that are made by post-editors in a document. So that doesn't give a general indication of the quality in itself. But of course, it's an instrument, again, to see that the quality is good enough or not. And then maybe I should shed light also on the near future of what we are going to do in this sense. Because from the beginning of 2023, so not far away in time, we implement our multi-engine strategy, which means that we will, whenever there is a new document coming in, we will send it to 3, 4, 5 different neural machine translation engines. When they come back, let's say for the same sentence, 5 or 6 different options, there is an automatic quality scoring system that will determine which one is the best and the only one that will be proposed to post-editors. So we hope that in this way, and we will check, of course, we will make the assessments again with post-editors, which means in our case translators, by the way. They just receive extra training on post-editing, but they are translators. We will see how it goes. So we think that in this way we will avoid the problems of, for example, document types. Because today, if we have a document coming from the European Medicine Agency, we use the public health engine. But of course, they may have a budget or financial statements. And by using different engines, we think we will have a good combination to have the best possible result nowadays for each sentence. But of course, I'll keep you informed in a new edition of the forum.
Thank you. Yes, Bruno, go ahead.
Yes, just to mention that we are also at WIPO working on quality estimation, and we got similar balance results that with recent techniques using BERTs and etc. similarity, we managed to be better than average, and we include it in our workflow. Currently, we send for different translation workflow different documents that have different quality estimation score.
Thanks. I'm going to go to another question, if I may. This one is specifically for Vera and Bruno, and it caught my eye. It's kind of along the lines of controlled writing, controlled documents for machine translation. That was a topic that was that was raised. Here it's, have Vera and Bruno had any joy persuading speakers to adapt their speech patterns to improve the output of speech recognition, also leading to better MT output? So, is it up there? It's on my phone.
So, yes. No.
Okay, there we go. We've got the answer.
No, we just cannot ask a delegate to please remove his strong French accent, for example, when he speaks in English. So like me, no way, we just cannot do that. So we have to deal with very different persons talking, especially in our context. The good news is, as we use machine learning, as we use our own data is also containing a lot of non-native English speakers talking, and so it's quite, I would say, it's actually quite good at recognizing a very strong Indian English accent, for example, or a Japanese talking in English, or the Quebec way of speaking in French, and so that's a good thing. But we cannot ask delegates to change the way of speaking.
Vera, do you dare to ask anybody to talk differently?
I don't think the members of the European Parliament are any different to your delegates. No, I mean, we're not there yet. It's just simply something that's voice training, and that will be the future. But right now, I mean, adapting your speech to something that you don't really see yet in action, it's a bit difficult. So no, I mean, this would imply probably a few years as well of work and persistence.
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, again, personal opinion, but it's not up to, I don't think even such an attempt should be made. For me, the onus is on the technology to match the people and learn from them, and that's why you need the large amounts of data. It's the same with translation. It's for the technology to do that. I used Dragon Dictate when I was a translator for a while, and then of course you learn enunciate more carefully, speak more slowly, that sort of thing, but it was a specific tool on my computer for me. If somebody came to me before this event and said, Markus, the thing is using a UK accent, so please fake one as much as you can, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. So no, I think the onus is on the technology. Speaking as an individual, I don't have any authority there. And there's one question which is very popular. I hope somebody can answer it. I can't. It's, how can you make MT post-editing financially attractive for translators? And I'm going to throw that at Mauro again, because you have to do that. So,
well, by improving the output of machine translation, and therefore they will be able to work faster and earn more money. That's the only way I can think of.
I don't know if that's the answer they were looking for.
We do our best to improve the machine translation engines and therefore the output. If the output is very good, there are very few changes to be made, and therefore, I mean, it should be financially attractive, hopefully.
Okay. Does anyone else want to comment on that? It's a tough one. I think it's a tough one.
Can I add something?
Yes, I have been scanning the cloud, but I haven't seen hands go up. Where's the hand?
No, it's Livia.
It's Livia. Oh, okay. Okay. Livia, yes.
I have been a post editor myself, and I can say if you have the domain-specific engines, well-trained engines, and the machine translation output is good, post-editing is very fast. And I have been post-editing up to from 6,000 to 7,000 words per day. So if a normal translation is around 2,500 to 3,000 words per day, with post-editing, if you have a good machine translation output, it could be double or even more. So even if you charge less, in the end, you translate a lot more. So you could translate more than double. So in the end, I think it's worthwhile for the post-editor as well.
Yes, and one more aspect which may help. Actually, we produce a little booklet called Writing for Machine Translation. So if we can convince authors to use the rules included in the booklet, then of course the output of machine translation will be better, because there are certain rules like minimum length of a sentence, maximum length of a sentence, and so on. So this is another technical way, but of course we have to convince the authors to adapt to those, not even rules, but tips.
Can we take another question? I see. No? I saw, well, Aminda was sitting there getting ready to come on stage and cut us off. Okay, so it's been very interesting. There's a lot more questions remaining. I hope it was interesting for you for a different perspective. Hope it wasn't, I mean, we saw the words before, how things were bleak and gloomy and even terrifying for the future. I hope they're not that bleak and gloomy and terrifying anymore. And, okay, then thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much indeed to everyone in this panel. Very interesting. About the length of sentences, I think certainly working in Italian, don't think they would be able to make them much shorter. Some of them are at least a page long. And interesting.